My name is Drew for Damage Control, and this is Overlooked Underplayed. Spiritual Warfare. It's a game by Wisdom Tree, the infinite purveyor of, pirate NES carts with strong Christian undertones, overtones, midtones, the whole scale. Now, Spiritual Warfare is one of the better known games for both being a Zelda clone and also pretty decent. But it's not perfect. And we'll encounter a couple of its flaws pretty quickly when we get to the one piece of music we'll be hearing for 99% of the game, in short order. So, starting off, it's very similar to the way Zelda began. Here we're on our first screen with a cave. And it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. A big difference in between Zelda and Spiritual Warfare, though, is the way it does its items. Here, your main weapons are various different kinds of fruit, there are 5 in all, which you use to smite sinners. Unfortunately, there's no tomatoes, because that would make sense to throw at people. You can collect up to 4 of each fruit, and the limit is how many shots you can have on the screen at one time, so you have to be careful. If you throw all your fruit, you're going to have to wait before you can throw another one, so you don't want to get caught defenseless when you have too few pieces or an itchy trigger finger. Now, all of them have different ranges, different speeds, different special properties, like the banana goes the farthest, the fastest, and the pear is the shortest range. Think kind of like your starter gun in the original Metroid before picking up the long beam. We also have these vials that are your bombs, and the game is kind enough to start you off with a 3-pack right at the beginning. You can collect up to 255 of them. There's no expansions or anything to buy, you just keep picking them up, so that does help speed things along, especially when there are a few spots early in the game where you can collect quite a bit of them, so you should never ever run out unless you're trying to destroy every bombable object in the game for reasons. So you're going to encounter hostile and friendly people. The friendly people tend not to move around with few exceptions, so that is one way to tell what you can touch and what you can't. There's not much in the way of underworlds in this game. Mostly it's the overworld with a few sections where you go inside or briefly underground, but it's all to scale with the overworld. You don't end up in this expansive dungeon or anything like that. Here we're getting to another one of our B-button items here. It's basically a potion, refills all your life, but I think they call them like vials of myrrh or something. Anointing oil. Something biblical. The white doves you see me picking up are this game's rupees. You use them for currency, and if you have 10, you can also spend them to pray to restore half a heart of your life. And you'll also notice with some of the enemies, these are just ordinary city folk here that have fallen to sin or got possessed by demons, who will occasionally come out as those little red things, which you actually kind of want because they have better drops than the regular enemies. And over here we've got our little bonus round flying onto the screen, annoyingly out of reach. Give us a moment. And this is where the educational part of the game comes in. When you touch them, you have to answer 5 Bible questions. A very popular element of Wisdom Tree is the pop quiz. And you'll get 5 not rupees for each question you answer correctly, and if you get all 5 of them correct, the 5th one will give you life and 10 rupees instead of 5. So let's see if I still have these memorized, because I really don't know much Bible trivia off the top of my head. It's certainly not from studying, it's from doing these pop quizzes over and over when back when I first owned the game. Alright, for the big prize. Come on! That's right, spin that bow tie, you weird Howard Phillips lookalike. Alright, so like I said, there's not much in the way of dungeons in here, and we are already, well, first off, we're on our big bomb build-up here for the first time, and we're about to enter the very first boss room. This is noteworthy that it's going to be the first boss room that you don't need to find a key for. But first, let's go back this way and actually finish blowing up the barrels that I foolishly tried to start with a single bomb before, for our first little hidden area, and our first new piece of fruit. So the apple is unique among the fruit. I mean, it's the slowest, it's got a range pretty decently, and I need 40 to buy it, and I only have 33. So rather than grind it up, I'm just going to move on to the boss, and we'll get that coming back. Well, yes, the apple is incredibly useful in this game because it is the only fruit that, number one, that pierces enemies. It'll keep going after killing something, and sometimes they'll take out a demon in one hit, and it also destroys some destroyable objects, and in fact is the only way to do it for some of them. Alright, I got my 40 now. So all of the bosses employ unique mechanics not seen anywhere else in the game. This one hides behind the rock, and when he peeks out there, you have to hit him with your fruit or a vial in order to get him. Speaking of get him, got him, good. And that opens the door to your Triforce, by which I mean a piece of the armor of God, which will also give you Metroid-like progression abilities. This part, the Belt of Truth, lets me push rocks. And in an improvement beyond Zelda is you can just push the same ones over and over until they're blocked. Kind of nice. There's actually a lot of clever interaction between different object types in the game, in which, you know, some of them can only be destroyed, some of them can be shoved around, and some of them can be shoved or destroyed. And many of the puzzle rooms take advantage of these differences, and you're going to have to make the right choices if you want to get through it. There are not as many usable items in this game, not as many sub-weapons. I mean, you've got the potions, there's also a torch, but really you just toggle it on and off to reveal passages and show which objects are pushable in some of the puzzle rooms. There's Samson's Jawbone, which is a boomerang. They were really kind of stretching it for that one. And then, of course, when you get the Sword of Truth, the 6th piece, that is also a B-button sub-item. So the entire game takes place in a city, and the overworld has a variety of different zones you might have noticed on the map. And the final area, which, spoiler alert, is Hell. You go defeat Satan once you have all 6 pieces of the Armor of God, though the Sword of Truth is actually in Hell itself, which is conveniently located under the prison. The overworld is made up of all the different parts of the city. We have the park. The next zone we go into is the downtown of the city. There's also an area with the nightlife, there are slums, there's suburbs, there's the beach, there's also a forest, which is oddly next to the nightlife, and of course the prison, underneath which, lives Satan himself. But anywho, so this is a basic overview. We'll fight 5. We'll skip ahead through the miracle of editing and just show you a quick glimpse of some of the other bosses. There aren't many games like The Legend of Zelda on the NES, despite being such an early released game for the system. And I'm not really sure why. There are a couple of games like The Guardian Legend and Crystallis that are very similar to it, but nobody really chose to emulate the wild success of Zelda, or if they did, they just languished in Japan and were never brought over to North America. That being said, Spiritual Warfare is not only a very successful Zelda clone, even if it doesn't hold up amongst the more advanced standard of A Link to the Past, which to this day, as you might recall from Couch Co-op, remains one of the best ever Legend of Zelda games. But despite being an obvious Zelda clone, which, proudly wears its inspiration on its sleeve, Spiritual Warfare also does a lot of its own things. From the before-mentioned weapon selection, to its modern-day environs, and to its advancement on the basic skill sets of the original Legend of Zelda. The only truly strange thing about Spiritual Warfare is the stark difference in quality and plain non-glitchiness compared to the other Wisdom Tree releases. I mean, after looking at all of the other games I showed you in the Amnesia Lane retrospective, it really boggles the mind that they were capable of something this solid. And I cannot help but wonder if there is a story to uncover there. So as strange as the journey was to get to playing Spiritual Warfare, and as strange as the fact that it even exists, I'm happy I could share it with you. I encourage you to give it a try if you like, good old classic 2D top-down Zelda games with a little bit of a twist to them. Don't be turned off by the whole religious thing. There's a lot of clever little puzzle rooms, plenty of secrets to uncover. The game is challenging in its own right, and, a rewarding play experience.